Obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is a debilitating mental illness that affects 1 to 2% of our population. That is approximately 350,000 Canadians and their families. OCD is characterized by persistent, intrusive thoughts and unrelenting compulsions. People with OCD often recognize the irrationality of their thoughts and behaviors, but still experience a drive to perform compulsions in hopes of finding relief from their worrying thoughts. The ritualistic acting out of these compulsions provides only temporary relief. Common obsessive thoughts experienced in OCD include worries of contamination, sickness, or harming themselves or a loved one. They may also experience feelings of disgust, fear, or doubt. Common compulsions to relieve the distress of these obsessions include washing, checking, counting, or arranging things. And while OCD can greatly affect a person's well-being and everyday functioning, it unfortunately remains underdiagnosed and undertreated. OCD affects men and women equally. Symptoms usually occur before 40 years of age, most commonly in early childhood and adolescence. Recent developments have found that genetics and neurology, as well as stress, are key contributors to its onset. Let's take a look at how this works in the brain. You have a worry. The orbital frontal cortex region of your brain gathers this information and sounds the alarm. Houston, we have a problem. This worrying information is then sent to an inner region of the brain, which is responsible for making you feel anxious so you remain focused on the stressor until the problem is resolved. The caudate nucleus is then responsible for turning off this distress signal. However, for someone experiencing OCD, this feedback system is unable to stop the distressing message, and the worrying thoughts continue to provoke action. If we think about it in another way, the distress signal part of your brain functions like an alarm clock, and the caudate is like a broken off button. So instead of turning off completely, it can only snooze. The alarm continually rings again and again and can only be silenced temporarily. Can you imagine how that would feel? Treatments for OCD can include medication and psychotherapy. Counseling works by helping people change their thoughts and behaviors. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, has been very successful in managing OCD symptoms. The success of CBT is an understanding that thoughts and behaviors have a strong influence on one another. How you think determines how you behave, and how you behave determines how you think. Up until recently, scientists thought the brain worked like a hardwired machine, a complex network of moving parts, each part responsible for a specific function. This idea gave rise to the phrase, one location, one function. And so, if a specific part of the brain was injured or damaged, it was thought that the area and its function were permanently lost. But a few enthusiastic researchers questioned this idea and have since found strong evidence that has revolutionized the way we understand brain development. Remarkably, they found that the brain continuously adapts and can rewire itself, even incrementally, day to day. So instead of a machine, the brain is now considered a dynamic organism, much like a plant, rewiring, reorganizing, and adapting. Most of the brain's adaptability is based on its ability to alter neural pathways. However, the brain is a rather competitive environment, where neurons or brain cells are constantly contending with each other for valuable real estate. The more often a neuron is fired or a thought or action performed, the stronger and more entrenched that pathway becomes. Remember, neurons that fire together wire together. Think of it like two paths in the woods. The first path is aged and well-worn. It is the path of our behavioral patterns and habits. Every time a compulsion is performed, that neural pathway becomes more rigid and more defined. However, as the old adage goes, use it or lose it. Because of neuroplasticity of our brains, choosing a less habitual thought pattern or action fires new neurons, forging new pathways. Over time, the old, well-worn paths are weakened and become grown over, and the new pathways, every time they are chosen, become stronger and more defined. This, of course, is not always an easy path to walk along. Think of the difficulty of learning a new language. We all, of course, have the capacity to learn many languages, but the second is much harder to learn than the first. That is because our neural pathways from the first language are firmly cemented, so it takes a lot of effort and consciousness to learn to think in another language. However, despite this difficulty, the discovery of the brain as plastic has great implications for OCD. Essentially, neuroplasticity helps us to deal with our malfunctioning alarm. Through neuroplasticity, we can reinterpret the meaning of the signal, recognizing that the noise is no cause for alarm, and over time, the sound will diminish. Let's take a look at how this understanding can be applied to a treatment of OCD. Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz has developed one form of treatment using self-directed neuroplasticity. He uses the term impartial spectator. When an OCD sufferer views themselves as an impartial spectator, they are able to distance themselves from their OCD behavior and recognize that they are not their malfunctioning alarm. This ability to develop a third-party awareness is the key to treatment. It might be helpful to think of an external object that represents OCD, perhaps a troll, a bird, maybe a bee. The impartial spectator allows the OCD sufferer to tell themselves that the OCD is not me. Instead, that OCD thought is due to a brain circuit gone rogue. Don't believe everything you think. Dr. Schwartz has developed a 4-step process to harness the plastic properties of the brain to work for the OCD sufferer, not against them. 1. Take a step back and mindfully relabel what is happening so you realize that what you are experiencing is not an attack of, say, germs, but an attack of OCD. Instead of telling yourself, I have to wash my hands or germs will make me sick, say, OCD is causing me to feel like I have to wash my hands. Step 2 is to reattribute those thoughts and urges to the brain pathway and to remember that it is a malfunctioning alarm. Reattribute the fear to something your brain is experiencing. Step 3 is to refocus your attention away from the pathological thoughts and urges onto more productive and helpful behaviors. That's where neuroplasticity comes in, because when you use your brain in a constructive, wholesome way, you create alternative brain pathways. These activities might include going for a bike ride, baking, meditation, or doing yoga. Step 4. As you notice that your obsessions and compulsions are starting to fade, the final step occurs. You revalue them, realizing that they are worthless distractions that can be ignored. Oh, that's not me, that's OCD. And now your brain is working with you instead of against you. As you learn to challenge and change your behaviors and thoughts, your brain changes structure. MRIs have provided us with strong evidence revealing that the malfunctioning alarm normalizes with treatment. This happens by harnessing the power of neuroplasticity. OCD is a debilitating disorder that impacts our lives and those around us. But an understanding of neuroplasticity teaches us why psychotherapy can help us to cope with this disorder. So, who's going to win? Me or OCD? You do not have to be dragged down the old path of OCD. You have the power to choose instead to forge new and healthier pathways using self-directed neuroplasticity.